We've got a property report that interests us this morning. Not always a given. Overall transactions in Abu Dhabi on the residential side dropping in the first half of this year. Now, that's according to a new report from Cavendish Maxwell, but it is a really mixed and nuanced picture. To talk us through the finer details, we are joined by the Director of Business Development, Zacky Sajjad. It is lovely to see you again, Zacky. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm good. Well, thank you.
We have some mysteries in this report, and we're asking you to solve them for us. First half of this year, if we put off-plan and ready sales together in Abu Dhabi, you are calculating a drop of about a third in both, 33% down when it comes to the value of sales and a 37% drop in the number of sales, the transactions compared to the year before. Why so?
I think it's a slight slowdown in launches in Abu Dhabi compared to last year. That being said, I mean, we're only half the year in, so I think the second half of this year, there's a lot of launches earmarked. So I think the numbers may sort of tell a different story come the end of the year. But so far this year, it's been a little bit quieter, should we say, versus 2024.
And this is, I mean, one of the big themes of this report is that it's the secondary market that is driving the sales that are there, and we saw a record for the villa sales. But if we stay with those off-plan, the launches, why aren't we seeing more?
I think it's just a case of multiple reasons. You know, the Dubai market's obviously booming at the moment, and I think you've got, the likes of Aldar that are also developing in Dubai now. So there'll be a combination of those factors. There's also the fact that, you're looking at Abu Dhabi is always, sort of a bit more cautious in its development outlook, and, what they're looking to develop on the islands, be that, Yas, Fahidi, Reem and Saadiyat. Although you're getting a bit more established, I think you're now starting to see these guys sort of just being a bit cautious given what's happening in the market. Explain that to me in more detail. What do you mean? I think what you end up seeing is, with regards to Abu Dhabi in general, you have a huge amount of land bank that they're sat on. I mean, obviously it's the largest emirate by geography. I don't think, when you're looking at a development cycle, there's a short, medium and long term, and I think Abu Dhabi's strategy right now is very much focused on the long term. I think some of the things that they're launching, if you look at the announcement of Disney and these sorts of announcements, they're probably focusing on some of those right now in this first half of the year, and then the resi will come probably in the second half of the year.
Why don't we have more developers in Abu Dhabi? Do we need more developers in Abu Dhabi?
Good question. I think the Abu Dhabi market is sort of there is some very big players that hold a lot of land bank in Abu Dhabi, and perhaps they don't necessarily see the need to sort of enter into JVs or sort of invite other people to come and develop. Not to say that doesn't happen. We definitely have seen a lot of interest in that, but it's not on the scale of, say, Dubai, which is, the strategy for Dubai has been slightly different. So there, you've got your big kind of master developers who then will sell off a proportion of those of their land bank to private developers, if you like. That's not happening as much in Abu Dhabi. Would it be good for the market if it did? Would more competition be good? Look, there's always positives and negatives to any scenario. Well, the way I would see for this is that, Abu Dhabi right now, I think they're sort of trending very positively. If you look at the numbers in terms of, the average sales transaction, it's increased from 2.1 million to 2.5 million. The numbers are positive. What you don't want to do is be in a situation where you're flooding the market with lots of supply. I think what's happening right now is things are being absorbed. The secondary market's obviously, really seen a big impact this year because of the lack of launches. But I would say that the second half of this year, you're probably going to see a few more launches in some of these island developments. And the secondary market, as you say, is absolutely selling. We've got a 4-year high for villas that are already built in terms of sales. Those sales up more than 70%. Apartments dominating sales, nearly 3/4 of sales are flats. That's because
that's what there is.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's very common throughout the UAE. Apartments are usually a higher volume, sort of ticket item, so they always dominate. Interestingly, what we're seeing the first half of this year is it has dropped slightly. So the villas have increased, only about 3-4%, but still, you'll always see the apartments sort of outnumbering the villas and townhouses.
Look at rents for me, because I was really interested in the pattern that you had here. And we had Fiba Ahmed from Beirut and Dubizalan, and she said that we're seeing a transition in Dubai for rents. If we looked at the first half of this year, we were 12% up on the first half last year, but only 5% up on H2, suggesting that curve was softening, was flattening a bit. You've got almost the same pattern here. Rents up 14% on H1, just under 7% for H2.
Yeah, correct. I think you're starting to sort of see... I mean, look, there comes a point where, I'm a renter, you'll pay rent to a certain amount, and then it becomes, well, let's look at buy now. That's the sort of scenario. So I think that's been happening. There's definitely an element of that in Abu Dhabi. I know a lot of people that have kind of switched from renting to buying, which is, fed into the numbers on this secondary market. And I think you're starting to see a bit of a stabilisation. We've seen some phenomenal increases in the rental market across the Emirates, for the last few years. I think we're probably now seeing a bit of stabilisation within that, which is probably a good thing.
I was surprised, though. I would have thought that the Abu Dhabi market was a bit too young in this cycle to stabilise, given the population coming in and, as you say, the lower stock.
Yeah, I think, look, there's still an element of people living in Dubai and working in Abu Dhabi. That still happens. There's no denying that. But I think increasingly now, what I'm certainly seeing is, I was in Abu Dhabi yesterday. I'm there again tomorrow. When I'm having meetings, the people I'm meeting with are now living in Abu Dhabi, which is an interesting trend. Whereas perhaps 5, 6, 7 years ago, these people would have been living somewhere in Dubai and commuting in. So I think you are starting to see that dynamic changing. And obviously, if you look at the stories, that you've been headlining this morning with all the investment coming out of Abu Dhabi, this obviously, encourages people to be locating there.
I was going to say, 40 seconds left. What's your gut feeling as to why people aren't doing the commute anymore but are moving, buying or renting?
I think it's just become a busier place to live, and much like, if you're living in London or Paris or New York, you just want to be closer to work so you can have that work-life balance. So I think that's probably one of the main drivers behind that.
Zacky Sajjad, Director of Business Development at Cavendish Maxwell, in with a nuanced report which would suggest less activity in the Abu Dhabi market, but only because there's been less stuff to sell. He says the second half of the year is going to look a little bit different. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.